So some recommendations off of what we've talked about so far is that we want to keep track of your stipend earnings, which Susan has a form that I think she will show to you, or that she has available for you. I'll bring it up also here in just a minute. We're gonna set. You want to set aside between 10 to 15% of your stipends each year. Um, and it's easier to do it as you go. So each stipend payment that you get, make sure you're not spending 100% of it, and save some for taxes. And then prior to the end of March, so the good time to do this is in the month of February or right now, um, is to download the 1040 NR-EZ form from the IRS's website. Um, Complete the 1040 on your own, or there are some people that will do it for you, but you will have to pay them for it. Um, I think that hopefully, I always think that it's a good thing to understand what you're signing, and so I mean, even if you have someone else prepare it, you have to sign it. And so I would recommend that you maybe try to do it on your own, and use this presentation as somewhat of a guide, and understand that if on your $10,000 of stipend, if you're calculating it and it's saying that you owe $4,000 of tax, think back to this presentation and say, hey, this isn't right. Okay, so keep in mind of what you should be paying based upon that little scale that we just went through. And if it's way out of line on that, then you might want to ask some help. Maybe even ask your host family for help, if they're comfortable in doing that. Because the, us citizens have been doing these returns for our entire adult lives usually. So um, and then make sure you keep copies of your forms and the check uh, prior to sending it to the government by April 15th of each year. So that April 15th deadline, tax day, is very important for us. And I'm
So,
gonna I'm gonna show the stipend record form. Let me see if
mhm,
there's my kids again. Don't mind looking at them all day long.
mhm.
Okay, so I believe that this is something that
This is a
Susan,
document we're gonna send out and share with all of you.
right. So you'll be seeing this in a different version here, but so we have a stipend record form that you can use to be able to keep track of the payments, the dates that you received it, the amount that you received, whether you got it in cash or by check. Remember, even if you get it by cash, it's still reportable. Okay, there's not a difference between check payment or cash payment. It's a good idea to maybe sit down when you get paid and have your host family say, yes, I'm paying this. It helps them know that they have paid you also, and so there's no um, discrepancies or question about it, as well as your initials. So that way you acknowledge to them that you have received it, and it just keeps everything above board, and uh, so we're not confused on what's going on with payment.
As a best practice, since most of you have bank accounts set up, and most families wire transfer the payments into your bank account, um, go to your bank and ask them for um, a monthly uh, transfer into your savings account of 10 or maybe even 20%. On the one hand side, it saves you money for your taxes, but it also helps you save money in general. So at the end of your year, you want to do a nice travel month, then you have some money saved up. So usually, if opening a savings account is free, and if your bank doesn't offer one for free, then think about changing the bank. all of the all of our professional candidates I know have been able to open free of charge bank accounts and savings accounts.
Yeah, that's a great idea, especially when you use that savings account. let's say that you're at that 15% level and you only owe a few $100s, and now you have that money available for you um, to 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 do something fun at the end of your time here in the U.S., which I'm sure that everyone would love to do. It's a
Tim,
lot better when you have the money to do it. So,
absolutely. Well, Tim, we got another question.
okay.
How do I pay my taxes? Is there anything else available besides sending in a check?
Well, you can't if you electronically file. So if you can go on to websites and they will file the returns for you. It's a little bit hard for non-residents to do this. I am aware of a couple that do it, but I'm not ready. I would not endorse them. So
Okay.
I'm not. You could do some Google
So
searches.
your recommendation would be just go on the IRS website, print out the form, fill it out,
That's right. Yeah.
take a picture with your phone so you have a copy,
That's right.
and then
And
write a
write a
check.
check. Yeah.
Can they pay with
Take a
credit
picture
card?
take a picture of your check.
Credit card is not accepted,
You
right?
know, there are mechanisms to pay by credit card, but
It's
unless you're in
complicated.
a dire circumstance, I would not recommend it because you are going to get charged 3 to 5% to pay by your credit card. So,
Hmm.
for example, if you want to pay by credit card because you get points, uh, then you're better off not, because your points are not worth 5% of what you pay. So you're not going to be able to pay. I would. You're able to pay by credit card, but it's not recommended to pay by credit card, which is why I would much rather see you save that 10 to 15% on a monthly basis, and then just write a check to the government. Um, and then we also have one of the things I wanted to bring up was that this is we're talking on federal. This is on federal taxes. I know that your professional au pairs are all across the U.S. and across different um, across different states. So I did not go through all of the different state requirements, but you would want to check with your state website, your state revenue website, and see what their minimum requirement is, or even maybe even just go onto their website, and they usually have a taxpayer toll-free number that you can call and just explain your situation and see what they would tell you in terms of, for example, that exemption amount is going to be different for every state. So you may find yourself that you have to file federal, but you don't have to file a state return, for example, or vice versa. That you may have a state requirement, but not a federal requirement. So yes, do make sure that you look on your state's website and check to see what their requirement is.
So, Tim, I see here I have a big question mark on my forehead, and I should know it by now, but my husband's taking care of all
Sure.
the tax side of it. And so, do I understand correctly? There are two different parties of U.S. government wanting to have taxes from me. Is that correct?
Well, you're correct in that there's two parties that want taxes from you. But they're not both the U.S. government. They're both governments, but one's a state government and then one is the federal government.
So the one is the one in Washington for the
Washington
entire
D.C. would
United
be
States,
for the entire United States, which would be
and this
the
is
Internal Revenue Service,
the IRS,
the
Internal
IRS.
Revenue Service.
But
So,
then
and
at the
this
state
is what we
level,
were talking about so
yeah. So
far.
we're talking federal taxes with the Internal Revenue Service, whereas every single state is going to be different, which is where it gets really difficult to be able to make generalizations about 45 states that actually have tax, because remember, some of our states don't have tax. So for example, if you live in Washington State, if your host family is in Washington State, or let's say in Texas, or in
New Hampshire,
Florida, I forget the New England states. I always get messed up, so I'm not going to
Okay.
say which ones because
Okay.
I don't remember. Tennessee is another one that does not have an individual income tax, but for example, California does. Our equivalent of the Internal Revenue Service is the Franchise Tax Board. Um, Oregon has, which is the Oregon Department of Revenue. Um, Arizona does. Nevada does not. New York does. And so, I mean, all these, it just depends on the actual individual state. That if you're lucky enough to be in Washington, Texas, Florida, Nevada, then you're not going to have a state requirement, and the only thing you have to worry about is the federal government. But if you're in a lot of the other states, then you'll have
So if
both
you're in
federal and
California,
California or
what are my
Oregon. Or
responsibilities as a professional au pair in California besides the federal tax?
you have to. So in California here, we have a Form 540 NR, which would be our California equivalent to the uh, to the um, the 1040 NR for non-residents. And so you would need to contact the Franchise Tax Board, and maybe I can work with Susan, maybe put together a list of all the states'
Okay,
websites.
that would be great.
That way you're not
Hmm.
because unfortunately with the internet now, if you just type in, let's say that I live in Oregon and you type in Oregon Tax Department, you're going to get some websites that are uh, you know are pay like for profit. It's not the government websites.
Hmm.
So what I'll do is I'll work with Susan and I'll get to you a list of all the state tax departments, the official
Okay,
websites, and
perfect.
that way you can pass that along to your as a resource to your professional pairs.
Okay, that's great. So I think this is going to be quite a project, figuring out your taxes on a federal level and on a state level. And I think because that's kind of a cultural experience, I will count 2 hours towards your volunteer hours for that project. So I think hopefully that helps a little bit, and learning a little bit about the U.S. taxes. It's maybe you can even make it a fun project. Find a friend you can do it with it, and then make it a fun project, and hopefully you come out ahead of it.
Yeah, and we already talked about this, but if you don't file, you could have trouble coming back to the U.S. Even as a tourist. There are some penalties that the government is going to impose upon you. So you don't want to go down this road. You don't want to not file.
I
Um,
have heard several times, well, you know, I know other au pairs, they didn't have to do it. Everybody had to do it, believe me. And the fact that they didn't do it doesn't mean, they may not have any consequences in the future. So I want everybody to have the information and then make an educated decision on what they choose to do for themselves. Because I personally believe the $1,000 maximum on taxes on the federal level is not worth it, risking your future to have problems if you ever want to come back to the US as a tourist, as a worker, in whatever capacity you may want to come back to the US. So I think that's why we want to educate everyone so they know what they have to do and make it easy for you.
and so this is the resources that I was referring to. It has the web address for the forms that we discussed, the 1040 NR, as well as the instructions. The IRS actually has a commentary also that is very helpful. So it may be something that even before or maybe at the same time, if you go to the irs.gov and then type in this individuals international taxpayers, and it's specific to au pairs. So that way you can see what the IRS says about it. It's very, very helpful. So that's something that I would definitely recommend that when you're filing your taxes as an au pair, that you look at this also.
Okay.
So,
I have one last question for
uh-huh.
you. Let's say we have many au pairs here in California.
Hmm.
What should I expect?
what
on the
should you expect?
percentage, the percentage of
It'll
tax.
be very low. I mean, you're probably looking at
So it's not
some.
another 10%.
No, 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 no. I mean, you're probably going to be looking at maybe 2%. I mean, it'll
So
be
it's a
very
small
small. Oh, for
percentage.
sure,
Okay, so
absolutely.
it's a one digit small
Yes, yeah.
percentage.
If you're
Okay,
saving that 10 to 15%,
we're good.
you're probably still going to be fine even on your state taxes,
Okay,
even in a high tax state like California or New York.
okay.
You will still, you
Yeah, New York.
might want to definitely be at that 15%,
Hmm.
and maybe it's going to actually be at closer to 12 or 8. But I would rather you be save a little bit too much, have a little bit more money in your savings account, and
Hmm.
go have fun after after your term is up.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. So. Um, and just a couple disclaimers I want to just that we have to do. Everyone's situation is going to be personal to them, so this is just general information. Uh, Susan's not responsible for filing your tax returns. I'm not responsible for filing your tax returns. That's something that solely you are responsible for. And if you need help, then ask your host family. Ask uh, maybe another one of your au pair contacts and seek out someone that is able to help you out with it. So that is it. Or do we have any more questions or?
Well, I would like to open it up if you
Yeah,
have any more questions. Let's see here.
I can address that one if you want me
On the So we have a question from Minneapolis. Henriette just looked up the Minneapolis or Minnesota state website. Is it possible to be considered a resident alien for state tax purposes? It states there substantially presence test.
to.
You are
Yeah, so
considered a resident alien if you lived in the US for at least 183 days during the current year and for at least a part of the 2 preceding years. However, if you have a student visa, you are considered a non-resident alien for the first 5 years of your stay in the US.
yeah, so this is so then this is where I was referring to if you've been here for a longer period of time. So the 183 day, which is as you can tell, is essentially half a year. And so if you've been here for over half of a year and you're not on a J-1 visa, then you have some issues. But you are on a J-1 visa, and the government has some special rules for that, and which is why you're still considered to be a non-resident alien as opposed to a resident alien. Whereas if someone that was here on a non J1 visa, if they're here over 183 days, then they would actually be considered to be a resident alien, which has a little different set of rules. At the state level, I'm not 100% familiar with Minnesota, um, but the in general, most of the states follow the rules on residency that the government has also. So, as was stated, that if you're here on a student visa, then there's some exceptions to that. My gut would tell me that um, there's also an exception for a J1 au pair also, and it may not be since there's far more students in the U.S. and in Minnesota than there are au pairs, that it may just not be on the front, of their website, and that's where it might be helpful to contact the state of Minnesota. But for the most part, I believe that most of the states are going to follow that same rationale of if you're a J1 visa holder and you only here for uh, for that period that you're an au pair, then you would not be considered to be a resident alien, which the big difference in that, I want everyone to understand, is that if you were to be a resident alien, your worldwide income would be taxable, which that means that your income back home would
So,
also be taxable to you here in
so
the
for
U.S.
instance, if you receive um, children's money in Germany, meaning like the government is supporting your parents because you're still considered in education, this money would be
Could be taxable. I
Could
don't
be
know on that,
taxable
but
if you're a U.S. citizen, but you're not
a
U.S.
U.S.
citizen
resident.
or U.S. resident. So I think the J-1 au pair status has actually a lot of benefits. Tim, we spoke about that a J-1 au pair visa holder should estimate between 10 to 15%
Hmm.
in taxes. Let's say if you would be like a U.S. citizen or a resident, how much is your taxes? How much should you calculate in terms of what goes to the government?
Well,
Because there's so many more things which all the professional au pairs, because of their visa status, are exempt for. For instance, Social Security,
mhm.
Medicare, all
Yeah,
the additional taxes usually employees and employers have to share don't apply to au pair. So we have already a big benefit, and the 10 to 15 is already a cut and a break, right?
yeah. The big thing that you're gonna as a J1 au pair, the big tax break is the Social Security and Medicare taxes.
How much is that?
So that right now is let's see 7.65%, and that's on every single dollar. Okay, so that 3,800 uh, that the first 3,800 is going to be subject to that 7.65. So we'll just call it 8%. So it's going to be subject to that 8% payroll tax from Social Security and Medicare that we have in the U.S. So every dollar that you would earn if you're a U.S. citizen and having that would be subject to not only income tax but also the payroll tax, Social Security, Medicare tax of about 8%. So yes, that J1 visa is very important because uh, it does allow you to have the lower tax rate on your Social Security and Medicare, which is zero. I mean, you're not subject to Medicare or Social Security, and that's outlined here. Actually, if you look at the commentary on au pairs, it explains that also is that your stipend is not subject to Social Security and Medicare, which is a great benefit,
Mhm.
especially at this income level to where every dollar helps.
Absolutely. Well, do you have any more questions? Just looking here at our chat room, looks like everybody is content. So I have a last poll for you, and it would be great if you can answer the poll very quick. So
Do I need to do something?
the question, no, we're getting 90%, and I think the remaining 2%, I think that's yourself. So you
Okay,
don't
yeah.
need to answer that question. So I think everybody on the call thought this is very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Tim.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I could help.
Really appreciate your help and insight on that, because that's certainly a topic none of us are specialists in, and really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if you
You're
ever
very
need
welcome.
a professional au pair, I'm sure any of my candidates would be available for
Perfect.
references to give you an idea what it feels like.
Perfect. I don't know if I would. My little 3-year-old Taylor, she's the Spitfire, so she's the tough one. So.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending, and I will be sending out the recording and all the documentation after our call as soon as I get back to the office. Thank you.